Hello everyone, my name is Tara Tariq and I'm Assistant Professor at the Faculty of Engineering, Cairo University, and I'll be presenting my paper entitled Smart Access to the Past, Investigating VR Applications for Interaction with Cultural Heritage. The presentation agenda starts with an introduction, theoretical background, materials and methods, results, discussion, and conclusions. Starts with identifying how digital media and smart technologies added new determinants in sustaining heritage sites. Actually, the study was inspired by the initiative of Egyptian Ministry of Tourism, which allowed visitors from across the world to remotely visit various heritage sites in Egypt during COVID-19 outbreak confinement period in the form of virtual reality tours. Accordingly, the research scope was identifying the efficiency of virtual tours for cultural heritage sites. The problem was lacking in specific guidelines or frameworks for generating efficient, memorable experience of heritage sites using the digital technologies. And the objective was to develop a framework for generating more interactive and culturally rich virtual heritage environment. Research answers two main questions. The first one is how new immersive technologies enhances the efficiency and attractiveness of experiencing cultural heritage sites. The second one is how does integration of new technologies with heritage sites communicate cultural significance of tangible and intangible heritage. The research structure, after identifying the objective and the scope, starts with a theoretical background, which presents some concepts related to VR applications in heritage sites, and the hypothesis development, then moving to the empirical work, adapting an experimental approach using a VR experiment and a survey for testing the hypothesis using a Spearman correlation analysis. After that, developing a framework for designing and evaluating VR heritage tours, then the conclusions and recommendations. The theoretical background starts by identifying digital practices for cultural heritage, which is not only the representation of heritage using the digital applications or VR applications, but it's using these new applications in documenting heritage, like the VR scanners, the GIS, geographical surveys, etc. Afterwards, virtual heritage is identified as a term appeared to describe the works using VR to create an immersive reality to enhance the locations for cultural heritage by providing visitors with fun, interactive, and immersive experience. The virtual reality tours for heritage sites are defined as a simulation for existing sites, which is presented as sequential scenes of video images, escorted by labels and text, even sound effects, to generate realistic site experience in a virtual setting. Three patterns of application for VR tours were identified, which are exploration, manipulation, and the contribution. According to previous literature, studying interaction and the experience of users within digital and visual heritage applications was highlighted by numerous studies. Different aspects and components of generating interactive experience were the major concern. However, the efficiency of virtual tours for heritage sites and how it impacts the desire for different users to visit the physical site in reality was the major concern in the presented study. Three aspects were identified: context, users, and technology, presenting information, interactive, and multimedia experience. Underneath each one of the three aspects, sets of indicators were assigned, and the indicators were identified, ones used for the design purposes and the others used for the evaluation purposes. Hypotheses were identified for this study: the efficiency of virtual tours and its effect on increasing tendency of visiting the site, the clarity, visual quality, and control on the efficiency aspect, the efficiency of virtual tour influencing positively the user's expectations and satisfaction, easy navigation and usability of virtual tours which influence its efficiency, the understanding of virtual tours in terms of site information which positively affects its efficiency. The presented study followed an experimental approach to test and identify what indicators influence the efficiency of virtual tours and its impact on encouraging visiting the heritage site itself. The virtual tour was selected from the initiative of the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism, a tour for Abu Simbel Temple, which was constructed in 1265 BC, dedicated to the gods of Amun, Ra, and Ptah during ancient Egypt, and it's known for its expensive tickets, so it was amazing to visit it virtually, actually, using a VR application. The entire experiment, along with all the assessments, was designed and conducted in VR lab at Architecture Department, Faculty of Engineering, Cairo University, using VR Oculus Quest 2 headset. Participants were asked voluntarily to experience a virtual tour of Abu Simbel Museum for around 5 to 10 minutes. The study was advertised as VR visit to Abu Simbel among the students and employees at Architecture Department, Cairo University. Participants were introduced to the objective of the study and the idea of virtual presentation of heritage sites. Moreover, they were introduced to the Oculus headset and how they are supposed to use it during the experiment before they start their tour. Since this study used an existing VR tour, the indicators for evaluating the tours were the ones you selected to be measured. Participants were asked to rate the indicators to evaluate and understand their full experience, and also they were asked to rate the efficiency. Actually, a total sample of 105 participants, students and employees, participated in the experiment with 105 responses. However, 7 responses were removed as a result of being outliers and misunderstanding of some questions. So accordingly, a sample of 98 participants, where 51% were females, 49% were males, and their age distribution, as shown, 76.5% were from 18 to 25. Of course, they were students. They were the included sample for the final data analysis. They were asked if they are familiar with the VR applications, and 19.4% answered yes. And they were asked also if they visited this Abu Simbel temple before, and only 17.5% answered with yes. In order to investigate if the measured indicators need to be reduced and to understand the average fitting of data, principal component analysis was performed on the measured indicators. And the mean standard deviations and factor loadings were calculated. So apparently, awareness and engagement indicators were dropped due to their weak and cross-loading in the principal component analysis. The variables from 13 variable to 11, mean ratings came out to score ease of use at the highest mean rating, and the comfort was the less mean rated indicator in the experiment. Participants were asked about the dislikes and likes of the experiment, and 70.4% of the participants answered that the realistic experience, sense of immersion, is their preferable thing in the most of the experiment. Regarding the dislikes, they hated the feeling of dizziness. 38%, almost 38% of the sample suffered from dizziness from the beginning of the experiment. Correlation analysis using Spearman correlation coefficient was calculated to test the 5 hypotheses stated before. But some interesting correlations were found, like the correlation between the user's comfort and the user's satisfaction. It turned out to be 1 as a correlation coefficient, and the ease of use of the tour and how it meets the user's expectations, and it also scored a strong correlation coefficient and significant one. The hypothesis testing turned to reject only one hypothesis, studying the easy navigation and usability of virtual tour, which influences its efficiency. So the navigation itself was rejected, but the ease of use was accepted as influence on the efficiency. The other hypotheses were supported according to the correlation test. According to that, it's easy to illustrate how all the indicators work together in terms of hypothesis testing, and how the correlation coefficients support each one of the tested hypotheses and the relationship between the indicators along or work how to they work together in terms of aspects, and this will help building the framework as a contribution of this study, and how every indicator influences the efficiency of the experience and how it enhances the tendency to visit the actual site physically. Discussion. The results of the experiment confirmed that the efficiency of virtual tours depends on 8 important indicators: the visual quality, users control, the expectation, satisfaction, comfort, and understanding, whilst it doesn't depend on the navigation through the tour or the ease of navigation itself. The efficiency of the virtual tour impacts the desire of users to visit the actual site in reality in a positive way. And in terms of answering the research question, so the first question was answered through literature investigation and the survey itself. It is the impact of different indicators on the efficiency of virtual tour of heritage sites. And the second question was answered using the VR experiment survey by raising the awareness for values of cultural heritage sites and the flexibility and accessibility of cultural heritage sites. It's now easy to develop a framework for designing and evaluating virtual experience for heritage sites using the 3 major aspects: context, user, and technology, along with the design elements and the evaluation elements measured in the study, and the different patterns of applications, which are the exploration, manipulation, and contribution, as an effective framework for evaluating and designing virtual heritage tours. In conclusion, the presented work identified the relationship between 3 main constituents of virtual tour design: context, users, and technology, as well as highlighting the indicators underneath each one. In conclusion, the efficiency of virtual tour experience appeared to have a significant influence on tendency of different users to visit the actual site. The comfort and satisfaction of users during the experience is perfectly correlated, and this makes users' comfort an important aspect to be taken in consideration during VR tour design. Questions were addressed in this study. Using ancient Egyptian monument, only one ancient Egyptian asset to be studied in one experiment. Sample size. It needs to be more with different age distribution. Only one indicator was tested to measure its impact on tendency to visit the actual heritage site. More indicators need to be identified and tested. The study suggests that some directives for future research, like testing the full proposed model in the process of designing and evaluation, along together, testing the impact of different indicators on the tendency of visiting the actual heritage site, and investigating more advanced virtual tours with more body input, motion, navigation, and storytelling effects. The presentation, I would like to thank you all for listening.